You are listening to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 73, Reoccurring Bad Guys. Today we talk about a listener-suggested subject of handling reoccurring bad guys. We discuss motivations for your reoccurring bad guys and how to introduce them to your players. We also discuss how to pace and organically put their plans into motion. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me in person, he'll always look into the motivations of his henchmen, Jared.
Yes, I will. Sometimes I spend too much time doing that.
I think you've spent clearly too much time into some motivations.
But sometimes it's come out on top.
It really has shined in some of your games more recently.
I mean, like, honestly, I when you turn NPCs into humans, all right, I got an example of this that literally happened. I did not intend it to happen. I didn't design it like that. So Aaron and Brian had found these evil witches in this town who were controlling a Nordic folk creature that was murdering the citizens of the town. So Aaron and Brian are, getting ready to go in, and they go in and blah, blah, blah. They subdue the suspects. One was actually shockingly difficult to subdue. Aaron almost got stabbed with a kitchen knife.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I tried to karate chop the kitchen knife.
You did try to karate chop. That was pretty awesome. Hi-ya!
I did explicitly say I karate chop the hand that has the knife, and you went like, really
karate chop?
I was having too much fun,
and essentially it was very interesting because once they Aaron and Brian have this capability in our game to essentially put bad guys in jail, an internal prison for supernatural creatures. These witches lived in like a basement apartment, that one of them worked, one of them was an older woman who only got Social Security checks. The other one was worked at a grocery store as a bagger. They didn't live a good life. Their entire motivation was out of vengeance for the life that they were leading. But Brian and Aaron were like really morally conflicted about putting them in this internal prison for bad people, though that they were ordering people being murdered. But I think what it really came down to was the humanistic traits in them. It was the fact that they were people. These are people.
Yes, there was a very, you look at it, they were very, very human in the portrayal of the NPCs, and I think that was made it really difficult for us. Like, one of them we knew was a real witch, and we're like, she's bad, she's gonna go.
Oh yeah,
we didn't actually have too much of a moral conundrum doing that one. It was her niece. It was her niece who was younger, the grocery store bagger, who's then begging us not to do what we just did to the other person. And I'm like, the conflict was, we don't really know, like, it's kind of like this ethereal jail, to give you a little bit of context here. And we don't really know what's on the other side of it because the story has yet to be written for what's on the other side of it. All we know is that once they get sucked into this, like, kind of mirrored plane, we can't get them back out. So, and
supposedly you can talk to them.
We can talk to them. We can summon them to a mirror and talk to them. But I don't know what else is in there.
Hellfire.
And they're just humans, effectively, be sent in there, but they're witches. I mean, so Jared thought it was going to be an easy choice, and I think in our younger years we would have just...
Yeah, in the younger years, but when you're playing...
We probably would have shot them in our younger years.
In the younger years, I don't think they would have survived the breaching clear. So...
Tango down.
Tango down. By the way, so it was hilarious. I was reading up on some new ammunition that's being developed, and of course, remember a couple of weeks ago, I had a problem with what the hell The primer is the word I was looking for. I was reading this, man. It's like, son of a bitch. There went our G rating. All right. So.
They're never G ratings.
Never G rating. I know. God damn it. There. Just solidify it. All right.
But anyways, so one thing we want to do first is shout out to Gary. You sent us an email several episodes back now, and we had actually done the episode that you sort of had talked about in your email, which was you replied to mass combat and spoke about it, and then also talked about our bugaboo with monsters and dungeons.
Harpies, specifically.
Harpies, specifically. So I do like some of your adaptations for the mass combat.
Very cool.
You talked about if you're going to have like 60 kobolds, that you divide them into larger mobs, and then you have players attack the mobs. I've seen that done with like spiders in D&D 5e and stuff. I think it's a really good way of handling. And
White Wolf even has a system like that for spiders, so it could be adapted to the White Wolf system as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, vampire book, it's all the way in the back. It's like spiders and insects and rats.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad system to use, especially if you have a lot of like things off in the distance that aren't actively engaging. Roll for them as a big mob, okay? Instead of rolling, 100 sets of dice for 60 different things. Like, just it's much easier to kind of treat them as like this big amorphous kind of blob until you suck items out of it. So I think that's a good way of doing it there by dividing up like 12 mobs of 5 kobolds. So it compacts the mass combat. And then you also talked about how you use an Unearthed Arcana supplement to deal with larger situations, dealing with larger mobs of players. In that, like a 10th level fighter gets 10 attacks consecutively, and so that player can just roll a d10, and then if they're all 1 hit point mobs, they just kind of tear through a bunch of them fast. Yep. So you kind of have that cool cinematic flair. It's kind of both sides, the best of both worlds with that.
I like that. I like that a lot.
The other thing that you talked about then, which was about our dungeon episodes. So we already did a dungeon episode, but you did bring them up, which was I think you hit right on the points that we were talking about, which was we were trying to say, make sure that your dungeons have meaning for the monsters that are there. So like you said, if there's a super highway, make sure there are like pirates or, roving bandits and things that might want to steal your stuff. If it's a factory, depending on how crazy, maybe it's a dwarven lord and, things like that. And so there's some other options that you have in that regard. And we totally agree with you. And then you also brought up the Conan versus the Lord of the Rings epic war battle scene. So, again, I think we sort of touched on that too in the mass combat episode.
Yeah, we did.
I think we're in agreement, which is, if you're going to have the small band of players be the deciding outcome, they go and kill the king, do that. Otherwise, your other thing that you suggested, this goes down to KYP. So again, listen to episode 2, KYP, know your players. If you're going to do something where the battle is predetermined and you know the outcome, make sure your players are okay with that and give them glory in the fights that lead up to it. And that's exactly what you talked about there. So again, great stuff. Thanks again for
always, Gary. Seriously.
Thanks again, Gary. And you did say that you want to write a defense of old school gaming and perceptions of old school gaming. Please, we do welcome it. We would like to have it.
We'd love to see it.
I'd love to have it because, I think, again, the more the people know about everything, the better that it gets to go.
When we share our knowledge, we grow our community and we make our community the best it can be.
So I encourage you to write in and do that again.
Yes, please.
But thank you again for listening. We do really appreciate it. And then that brings us to another email that we just got.
That we literally got this morning.
And that's coming from Mike in Wisconsin. And Mike, thanks for writing in. Thanks for listening to the podcast. You wrote in, and that's going to be the episode topic we're going to talk about today, that you play Werewolf the Apocalypse, which is a game that we're very, very fond of.
Extremely familiar with.
It is actually very likely that Jared played in your LARP.
It's beyond likely. I know we did. It's probably not the same STs because it was several years ago. It was probably over, I don't want to say this, over 20 years ago. I'm getting old. I was like, I
You
wasn't
were
even
young when you were doing, because you were doing with your brother, and your brother was
I was so yeah, I was probably like 14 at the time. So I mean, we're talking years ago, but the Kenosha LARP has been around for a very long time. Before I could drive a car, that there has been a LARP going on in Kenosha. They have a very, very active community. But no, I actually was at least we played in one game, and then I think our entire group decided that it was a little bit too long of a drive for us every Friday night. I think a couple of our members actually continued to go for like 2 or 3 more sessions, though, because we were part of a big group.
Well, yeah, and so again, that's just an interesting kind of connection that we have there.
Yeah, it's crazy. Small world.
Small world indeed. So again, your question actually comes out as you wanted to know if we could do an episode on making reoccurring bad guys or dealing with bad guy motivations and henchmen, because you were looking to set up and run a reoccurring. We had to look up this acronym. Sorry, we didn't know it. It was BBEG NPC, which was Big Bad Evil Guy NPC, and we didn't know what that was. I was like, is this specific to World of Darkness? I'm like trying to
like most of the others I got, like WTA, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Obi-Wan games. I got that. So yeah, it was kind of, but that one went right over our heads. Yeah, there we are Googling it.
Thank you, Google. But no, we are happy to do that, and that is this episode that we're going to do there. And Mike, thank you again for listening, and share this with the other storytellers that you do LARP with. We'd be happy to answer anything specific to Werewolf the Apocalypse or just in general. We will field this as a broader discussion, but we'll put some notes in there for Werewolf the Apocalypse. So the episode is going to be making reoccurring bad guys, motivations, and henchmen. Jared.
So we have discussed a little bit when it comes to building better villains. I think it was in that episode. Reoccurring villains are definitely something that is takes a detailed touch. Number one is that you need to make them, whenever a player is going to meet them head on, they need an escape plan, or the players can never meet them head on. Because do not put it past, especially in a LARP where you were dealing with large group. I don't know if you're dealing with 10 players or if you're dealing with 30. Someone in that group, it doesn't matter if you're like it's going to be a quiet sit down at a very popular restaurant. It doesn't take a bone gnar, or it only takes a bone gnar. And for those of people who aren't educated in White Wolf, bone gnars are a tribe of werewolves that tend to be indigent. The more callous term is homeless. So for them, they you can put out an arrest warrant, but there are a lot of arrest warrants for people who are indigent that it doesn't matter because the police don't know where to look. So it only takes one bone gnar to whip out his 45 in the middle of a very nice restaurant and plug him with the entire magazine. And if you have a mortal villain, that person is dead, and suddenly your reoccurring villain just died. So reoccurring villains, you have to be very, very careful.
Yeah, we've talked about it. This is tough with a reoccurring villain. It's better to kind of have a reoccurring villain behind a fall guy.
Yeah,
okay.
I love putting lieutenants in front, because the reason why you put the reoccurring villain behind a fall guy is that the fall guy can be killed, and then your reoccurring villain is still out there. And we've talked about it before. It's actually in the Should Nots episode that just came out recently. Do not present a villain to your players that you do not wish to have them killed, because they are ready for them to be killed,
or are ready for them to be killed, because your players will if let's say that you do let the villain escape there, your players are very likely to now pursue and chase that villain to as their only driving motivation. Okay, and that's really tough to be like, I don't want you to kill him right away. You'd have to be prepared for that. The moment that you put that in front of them, understand that player motivations may say, well, we're going to make sure we kill that reoccurring villain.
And it's funny because one of the things that one of the TV shows that I loved as a kid, and I kind of started watching a little bit when I started back on the road, just kind of going down memory lane, was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. One of the most famous reoccurring villains was Spike, who literally actually became eventually one of the good guys and part of the story as a whole. The thing is that and I've seen a lot of storytellers, because trust me, there was actually one storyteller who's like, I wanted to make a Spike-like NPC. And I'm like, that can't happen in a LARP. Because the reason Spike can do that is because it is scripted television. A writer tells that Buffy is not going to kill Spike, or this time he will get away because they just don't feel like chasing him, I guess. You got to look at it more like... less like Buffy when it comes to recurring villains and more like the real world. Because you have a group in Werewolf the Apocalypse. If you're anything like my group, they're trigger pullers. They're what we call in the shooting world, they're pipe hitters. You know what I mean? They will annihilate targets. And if you put that target in front of them and that target is running away, they're going to pursue, they're going to engage, and they will destroy the target. That's why when I say you better have a clever escape plan, I mean, it better have a train in the sewer, okay?
Yeah, you really do need to have an escape plan always for your villain, and the villain needs to enact that escape plan several turns before it happens. Because I guarantee you, if every henchman dies and it's just the big bad villain, you have left the villain then exposed to be killed at that point.
Yeah.
Because there is no way that he is going to get away in time. So typically my advice would be is if you're going to present a big bad villain that's going to keep kind of showing up, let the henchman do the dirty work. The villain shows up, says something really quick. You know that he's behind it, or all the henchmen carry the card. He's a faceless villain at the time, but you learn about the villain and the motivations behind the henchmen that you interact with. Because, again, it keeps your villain safe, okay? Mm-hmm. The villain is still doing stuff. The players have a motivation to hate the villain, okay? The players have motivation then to seek out and try to fight the villain.
And I want to piggyback on that. It makes it cooler. The better BBEG doesn't walk out in front of a group of people and goes, I mean, they do in video games and they do in scripted television. So yeah, they can do that there. But when you think of villains, okay, they don't particularly jump up in front of law enforcement and are like, I don't know why my villains do the count laugh.
The only way that you can do that is the villain literally has to be almost to a godly type level. And then you have to start thinking about, can your players surmount the mountain that's in front of them? Can they scale this mountain and defeat the villain? And
mind you, they will find a way, even if you're like, okay, all right, you're going to need a weapon forged by the Fae people. Don't put it past them to first be like, okay, what if we put, I don't know, 10 pounds of C4 in his car and blow it up? That's going to make a small crater in the earth, okay? And there's going to be enough shrapnel to make that person no longer exist. That's a lot of bang. And again, it's your whole team going left of what you're intending. Now, if you have more complacent, and it comes back to KYP. I know we keep harping on it, but KYP.
It's huge on KYP because this is if your players are amenable to seeing a villain that will walk away before the fight and do the and the monologue and all that stuff. Okay, this is the reason why in our house game we had to enact I am entering a monologue. The GM literally has to break the fourth wall.
He does.
And say, you don't shoot him yet. Okay,
I have a villainous monologue to deliver.
Okay? Because we also then have to break the fourth wall and go, okay, I'm going to plug him right after the monologue. Okay,
right after the monologue, I get my strike roll, right? We're good on this?
I get my surprise attack that he was not expecting.
And I just, I leveled up my gaming and stopped doing it. And the other thing about Aaron's point that's really cool is when first they're engaging henchmen and they don't even know who the villain is yet, right? That leads into a mystery. Now it's an adventure that we're looking into. All right, each one of them carry a card for some, I don't know, local business. Interesting. Local casino. Interesting. They're all security guards at this local casino. Blah, blah, blah. Now we're getting into something. Now we're investigating a casino. Casinos have lots of security cameras, so your Krynos guru can't just be like, fuck it, and just start, go 12-foot tall werewolf in the middle of a place that has so many recording cameras. One would not believe it. Trust me, I work in gaming. Every square foot is monitored.
It's a really good point, is putting them into situations where they can't necessarily flagrantly use their powers to find and search out the villain.
But don't put it past them that they won't use regular means. That's the thing in the end.
Yes.
They like I said, it only takes a bonar with a submachine gun to ruin that story.
Yes.
But the thing is that what I really liked about Aaron's is that adventure. It's welcoming your players to come walk down this story with me, to investigate, to start talking to different NPCs. Now, in LARP, I have known many, many storytellers. I've seen good storytellers, I've seen mediocre storytellers, and I've seen awful storytellers. Unfortunately, the awful category is much larger than the ones who are like, I sat down and was like, holy mother of God, this guy is so damn good. But the ones that I have seen that are so damn good, you're going to build this just like you'd build a tabletop game, okay? When you are crafting that story, sorry, this is kind of a little bit off topic. When you are crafting that story, make sure you're crafting your NPCs just as you would for a tabletop game. They have to have personality, history, blah, blah, blah. But back to our big bad enemy. Crafting a big bad enemy also requires organization, okay? And that goes also to Aaron's point of having a representative. Personally, one of my favorite representatives are lawyers. They're great. They are literally paid to keep their mouth shut. And they have client attorney privilege. Okay? They can't be brought up in a court of law and be like, and he asked you to deliver what message?
This actually works really good because typically when you're dealing in the werewolf world, for example, you have Pentex, which is a big evil corporation.
Huge evil corporation.
Plenty of lawyers.
They have lots of lawyers.
All their lawyers on you to make you feel like life is terrible.
and that's the thing. So when it comes down to that organizational structure, lawyers are fantastic. Having lieutenants, just like Aaron said, the lieutenant acts as a representative. The lawyer acts as a representative to the lieutenant. The lieutenant really even doesn't know the guy he works for. He has hints. He gets a paycheck. He's met him once or twice, maybe. But like, okay.
And again,
Aaron, how many times have you met your CEO?
Just a handful.
Handful of times. Same thing with criminal organizations. You look at any mafia movie. You don't meet the boss unless you're his personal freaking bodyguard every day.
Again, and working your way up to the boss. So again, this can be done in a werewolf setting. There's a couple different ways you could do it. You could have like the leader of a pack of like BSD or something. Like I said, you could have somebody high up in Pentex maybe being your big bad recurring villain. You could have a vampire be your big bad recurring villain. I'm just kind of giving you some ideas. I don't know which direction you're kind of going to think about going with this, but there's all sorts of different ways that you can put lower level people below them. Just make sure that whatever you do, it fits. Again, with Pentex, the organization is pretty well defined, and with the BSD, the organization is pretty well defined as well. But you can do clever things with the BSD, meaning that they've got more motivation to what they want to do. And why are they going after your players, or your players happenstancing to run across their bigger goals?
Right. And
now there's an intersection. So you have to think about one of two ways how you want to introduce that. Are they going after your players because your players have done something? Reaction to a consequence to a reaction, effectively, or are you having your players stumble upon something new, meaning you have some lower level NPCs, maybe Fomore, or humans that are tainted by the worm? Are they doing something nefarious somewhere, and your players have picked up, in the ether, like, you know, the sniffs and the whispers
rumors
of this. And so they want to go investigate. They find it. You have to start small to build up big, because what you really need to do is the biggest problem that I think that any GM has or any storyteller has, and I had this myself, is that you want to present the villain because you're like, oh, they're so
you're
cool.
Salivating.
They're so cool. They have such a good motivation. I've built such a good motivation for them. But in
LARP, you even know what suit you're going to wear to represent that. You know, like, okay, I'm going to bring my suit to game. I'm going to change in the car.
But what you need to understand is that your players don't think or know they're cool yet. Okay, they don't think that they are. They have no attachment to them themselves.
Yes.
And so the problem is that the thing that you really need to do, it's like fishing for your players to catch your villain. Okay, keep putting little blocks in their way. Okay, you keep running into these people who are associated to the person, the big bad guy that you have here. Okay, maybe you have a vampire who's been on a murderous spree. Okay, but he's whacking high-level people in your cairn, or he's insanguinating all sorts of kinfolk. Okay, but the kinfolk are being kidnapped. Okay, something like that. Okay, you have to just make sure that the players save one, and they find some of the henchmen's bad guys, and they go, okay, good, we stopped it, we killed these guys, but the kidnappings don't stop, or the thing doesn't stop. It happens again. The more that it happens, the more the players, and again, touch on the emotional desires of the players. What will get your players emotionally invested into wanting to pursue and find out who is behind all of this? That is the most important thing you need to do, and it cannot be done by just being like, here it happens once, now go. Okay? Some groups will latch onto that, but assume that your players are going to be like, we took care of that. That was Monday. We're on to Wednesday. Like, okay, that was last week's problem. Like, no, assume your players are like that, but have it come up again. The more it happens, the more that you show that there is something bigger happening behind the scenes, the more your players will dive into wanting to pursue the bad guy. They will know that every time something happens, and you'll start seeing them get angry when something happens to the bad guy. We're going to get him this time. And eventually you're trying to tip the players over into that hunt mode where they're going to go after the bad guy consistently.
Yep. Perfect. I got nothing more to add to that. So I do want to dive into motivation for villains. Now, we do have a whole podcast, Building a Better Villain. Motivations, so what you got to realize is one, what type of supernatural creature are you dealing with? Are you dealing with a supernatural creature at all? If you're like me, I love mortals. I love showing the power of mortals. I love mortals.
Mortals with supernatural lieutenants in front of them are the best.
Oh my God.
Okay, because you're like you're so mad that somebody who's so powerless could have so much power.
But in this world, humans can collect a certain type of power that is just beyond the capability of the supernatural, and that is money. Money. That has been one of my big peeves with Vampire for the longest of time, is that they're always wealthy. And I'm like, how the did you accumulate any wealth? When you wake up, the stock market is closed. Your trading is always, you can't even day trade. But humans have that capability. They can get a position as a senior partner in a law firm making $300,000 a year and have a disposal of an entire law firm because they don't have the werewolf rage where, I might frenzy and kill everyone on the floor. And two, they don't have vampires where it's like, well, I can only work from sundown to sunup. Yeah, that's not going to work for us as a law firm. Humans have that capability to actually interact financially, physically, and politically, and socially, because they don't have those restrictions. Werewolves do have some of those restrictions, and so do vampires. But motivation, where were they when you look at your NPC, your NPC for the first time? No one ever became, well, I mean, there are certain people that if you look at the motivation of certain serial killers, typically you'll see a history of trauma. People tend to turn their backs on the world when the world has seemingly turned its back on them.
Look at the type of bad guy that you have. So is it a human that has been, like Jared said, connected to trauma? Okay, are you gonna have the big bad guy be the human that directs all these underlings and kind of moves them in a direction? And so, what is the trauma designed to effectively do to them? So make them bad, but what are they trying to accomplish through having all these underlings do stuff? Are they trying to destroy the werewolf nation? Because a long time ago, werewolves eviscerated their mother. Okay,
maybe their mother was a werewolf and just left them.
Lots of possibilities. If it's a BSD, okay, maybe their fall down the spiral happened due to some trauma. So you can bring in the connection to the werewolf nation and where they went from being a warrior of Gaia to being someone who despises and tries to destroy Gaia, tries to uproot the Cairn. Were they part of the Cairn? See, this is how you can then marry that villain to the history of your Cairn.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it somebody in Pentex that's a simpler motivation? Pentex is doing evil things, nefarious things. You kind of go back to the human motivation.
No. See, I like Pentex more when they're not doing nefarious things. Like, haha, we're building an oil when they don't think they're being nefarious. Because in Werewolf, oil companies like Endron, which is a Pentex subsidiary, they portray them in a villainous light. You got to look at the book just like propaganda. All right. As we talked about in our deep dive into werewolf cairns, werewolves are essentially environmental insurgency, right? Trying to save the earth. Endron thinks I am powering business because I pump oil. You can drive your car because the pharmaceutical company that is them, and I forget their name off the top of my head. We manufacture drugs that keep people like Jared from organizing his house 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. For those of you who haven't heard that episode, I suffer with clinical obsessive compulsive disorder. I have to take medicine every day to keep that under control. So they think they're doing the right thing. It's little actors in there that contaminate a batch of, like the person who contaminated, what was it, Tylenol or Advil? I think it was Tylenol. The Tylenol poison thing. He contaminated like several batches of Tylenol. And it shut down the whole business for a long time. The Endron, it's only at the top does Endron know that we're conducting a new drilling site that happens to go through a cairn. Or we're going to, do something that will disturb the werewolves specifically and destabilize their nation. Because that's one of the things that all villains with werewolf, when it comes down to it, if they're just out to eradicate the race, right, of werewolves, get rid of them, all I'm going to do is hire, former operatives. I'm going to give them certain drugs, a little bit of indoctrination into the worm and whatever, and then I'm going to set them loose, and I'm just going to keep pounding on you with bullets, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I'm going to do. If I want to destabilize your whole nation, I'm going to do smarter things. I'm going to embed myself with you. I'm going to offer you opportunities. I'm going to protect your cairn. I'm going to have it one guy who's not worm affiliated. This is my absolute favorite, right? Is have the lawyer not be worm tainted at all. He's just a lawyer who works for John and Brown law firm, right? And there is a mysterious benefactor who keeps adding land to the cairn. And everyone thinks this is a good thing. Yeah, but he's purchasing that land. And then he's going to purchase the land around it. And then he's going to take the cairn by eminent domain. That's my plan. Now, I've taken your home by legal means. And if you fight us, you're not going to be fighting some Endron guys in spacesuits with their, big honking silver weapons. I'm going to make you fight the state police. Let's see how well that goes. Because now you're cop killers. You're not Endron bad guy killers. How does the werewolves beat that? But back to motivation, though. That was a little off topic. I apologize. Back to motivation. When I worked with, violent youth offenders for 8 years, and I loved these kids dearly. They were my kids. When people would ask, how many kids do you have? I'd say 90, because those were my kids. And I loved them dearly, and I miss them dearly. So every last one of them, with the exception of a few, I would look at them and be like, where's the trauma? Where did it happen? What happened that they needed to build such a hard persona, that they need to carry a gun, that they need to have the power to take life, right? They need the money from drug sales. There's always trauma there, because trust me, for a little bit, I drove routes. So I would pick the kids up from their homes and drive them to school. And some of these homes that you would see are in neighborhoods that are sad. And that some people would say scary. Some people, and that's understandable. Yeah. Was I on my guard? Was I tip top when I was in these neighborhoods? Absolutely. But when you look at a house that has 8 kids, right? There was one house specifically. It was in an area known as Chicago Heights. It's one of the more poor one of the poorer cities in the Chicagoland area. Went to pick up a student. This house is no bigger than a thumbtack. It's probably a 2-bedroom house. There were 8 kids on the porch and 2 grandparents. How are 2 grandparents going to control 8 kids? Where's mom? Where's dad? There was the trauma. I was abandoned. And this particular student, to make up for that hole in their heart, to make up for the wound, because that's what trauma means. Trauma, if you go back to the ancient Greek, means wound, right? Where was the wound, and how are they filling it? You know what I mean? And that makes a really good villainous motivation. If your villain is against the world, they want to see the world burn. It's hard to make a Joker-like villain, because some people are like, well, yada yada. But look how many YouTube videos are out there trying to examine the motivations of the Joker in The Dark Knight. I've seen at least 50, because I watch everything related to Batman. But where's the wound? Know that as the storyteller. If you know where the wound is, and you know why they chose to close the wound in that manner, and what you're looking for, because a lot of people, when they look at villains, I look for strength. I look for the strength. Where is the strength of my villain? Why does he kick ass? Why is he so cool? Very few people look for the weakness, because from our weakness, where we are weak, these people essentially have a hurt that they're overcompensating for. And they grow that overcompensation. And they will do anything not to feel that pain again. And if that means destroying a cairn full of werewolves, so be it. It's not because I hate the werewolves. It's because my senior VP said, drill here. Drill there. My senior VP said it. I want my job in the morning. So I'm going to drill there. And he said, listen, there are some environmental terrorists that live in that area, so make sure we have security guards there. By the way, I'm going to give you a team of security guards. Very highly trained. They will protect the workers. I don't even know. I don't care, because all I fear is poverty again. Right now, I'm a director of drilling locations or whatever, and I have been wounded by poverty in my past. All I care about is my next paycheck and ensuring that I will never be poor again. Or my mother will never leave me. My wife will never leave me. I will be remembered. I will not be forgotten. Another motivation. I will make sure that my children's killers are brought to justice. Notice how these evil deeds can be brought from almost altruistic or just natural impulses. I don't want to be poor. Who the hell wants to be poor?
And again, I think that is the most if this sounds tough to you, it's because it's probably very relatable as a human experience. Yeah. I mean, it's just you can hear it and you go, that makes sense that this person would be motivated to do X, Y, Z. And I think that when your players eventually get there, and again, what's really important with motivation is that as your players have started to pick up the breadcrumbs that this person is doing these bad things,
leave these breadcrumbs.
Okay. The players need to be able to learn about who that person is in their exploration into finding this big bad villain, and they need to learn the motivation behind it. You want the players to be torn and conflicted when they finally come to fight them. We have to do it because it is in service of Gaia. We must stop this person from doing what they're doing. But are they really, in their heart of hearts, a terrible person? That is the almost ultimate big bad villain. Because what you want your players to do is feel conflicted. You want the characters to go forth and do that. You're trying to put a little bit of emotion into this game and make it so the players are having a tough time. You know, that maybe some of them wrestle with it and struggle with the idea of killing the villain. Do we bring them to the police or do we kill them? Do we how do we handle this person? And can we handle this person without legal ramifications, things that affect us in the real world?
Yeah, you need to politically connected.
You really need to put some without putting actual barriers and breaking the fourth wall and telling your players no. You need to make the players feel like there are consequences to different things that they end up doing here. And, and really make them struggle with that kind of the morality of what they're going to end up doing.
Struggle with the morality, or at least understand in the end that this isn't, because the people who should just be getting whacked out right by your players, just no questions, are the henchmen.
Yes.
Which is going to lead us on to our final topic. Henchmen. I love henchmen. I absolutely love henchmen. Henchmen are fantastic, right? Here's my thing. Sometimes I dive a little bit too deep into henchmen.
God.
Yeah. Sometimes henchmen become people with me. Sometimes this is a waste of time. Sometimes it is a good time, because my players actually meet a henchman that's worth redeeming or something like that. One of the things that I recommend with henchmen is you are looking for people that are willing to break the law. That's the big thing. And there isn't exactly a hardware store or I need two guys willing to murder. There isn't exactly a temp agency that's I need trained assassins. The thing is that you have to come up with, which is difficult as a storyteller. Now, back in, if you're running a D&D campaign, it's a lot easier. People will do a lot for money, especially in the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages, I can make a week's worth of wages to carry a sword and go confront this guy. I don't even know how to carry a sword, but you're going to give me a week's worth of wages? Awesome! My family will eat tonight.
Sell swords, literally.
Literally, I will sell you my sword, and it's perfectly legal. There isn't the legal boundaries. Right now, there are hundreds of legal boundaries. If you go to a sci-fi or Star Wars, Star Trek, again, legalities don't get in the way. The hardest area to do this in is quite literally the modern world.
Because we have the perception and the knowledge of the modern world. That's what makes it challenging.
It does, because there are laws also that prevent us. In Star Wars, there's no law that's there's imperial law, and that's about it. And let's be honest, that's law that was literally written by the bad guys. So they don't care that you're a bounty hunter that carries a flamethrower, a missile launcher, and a bolo shooter, because sometimes I try to bring him in alive. There's no law against that. They show up on Imperial Star Destroyers and are treated like guests. In the Dark Ages, sellsword. I'm not even going to go any further. There was an actual job classification. Like, oh, I could go murder people for a living. That's what I do. Because not everyone was classically trained with a sword. But the modern world, we have these things called cops, military, lawyers that handle disputes. What you really need to look for when you are trying to build a henchman is criminal. Is you need to look towards our criminal element and people that know no other way, the desperate.
If you're going to do humans particularly, it's got to be somebody criminal.
Well, I mean, someone who has at least criminal leanings.
Yes.
Then
inclined to lean that direction.
Exactly. And, you know, for example, one of the tools that I've used is the rise of private military corporations, or PMCs. You know, they go by many names. But if I hire, you know, somebody with Ranger experience, 75th, because one of the sad things about our modern military is we create wonderful soldiers. We do. We create awesome soldiers. We don't know, or we currently don't really create great civilians. The military has very little capability to turn those soldiers back into civilians and teach them how to integrate, because, you know, a Ranger can plug a guy real easy, can clear a building very quickly and safely and securely and act like an absolute professional. But on his resume, how does he get a job as with a good paying job? You know, right now, IT skills. I was a Ranger for 4 years, you know. Well, I'm looking for an IT specialist. Huh. And that leads to despondence. It leads to not having the ability to find a job, you know, and what you got to do is you got to put that Ranger in that situation, right? Well, you're going to guard this pipeline, because there are environmental terrorists that are running around. We're going to give you an M4. We're going to give you money. We're going to give you purpose. And that's when the werewolves start coming out of the woodworks. Now, there's something that Ranger is going to do. If it's in Werewolf the Apocalypse, there's something called delirium, where essentially humans have a natural instinct to run from werewolves and forget what they saw or rationalize it. Oh, it was a giant fucking bear. But even a giant fucking bear, that Ranger is going to draw down and engage that target. And now you have a very lethal henchman who is doing it for all the right reasons. I was just hired to protect a pipeline. You're environmental terrorists. I'm going to protect it. I'm going to come up. I'm going to try to confront you. And your players, trust me, your players will escalate it from there. One of them, when they start walking up and they're like, I was seen by the guard who's carrying an M4 and he's got body armor on, he's got a radio, I shoot at him. You don't even need the military guy, because once a round goes flying, he is going to return fire. Okay, he's going to look to cover and return fire. The players have escalated him to violence. And ironically, he's a good guy. He doesn't care about destroying Mother Earth. He is a good person.
He's just seeking a paycheck.
He's seeking a paycheck, and he just happens to have a very particular set of skills. Come on.
I know
okay.
what you're going with.
Cops, you know, sometimes can be hired out for work, nighttime security. Man, that makes it a real freaking challenge. You know?
Again, these then present moral conundrums to your players. It's not just faceless bad guy. These are just humans trying to get a paycheck. They're not working there like twiddling their mustache going, I'm going to destroy the werewolves. Okay? Like, again, KYP, know your players. Are your players going to indiscriminately just murder people? Okay.
If they will, I'll still put my Ranger NPC there because he is going to put some very, very good shots downrange.
If you want to make your players feel horrible afterwards, you bring out obits afterwards.
Oh, God, you are a dick.
Okay? The players start reading obituaries about what happened to these people, and they're like loving father of 4.
2 silver stars.
Like,
coach of a local baseball team.
Okay? Again, this is, you are...
But that, for me as a storyteller, is an exciting idea to step into because I'm hoping that someone in my group of 30 or 10 players is going to look around and go, guys, we need to talk about policy on murking people. And then it incites political change within your cairn. Now we're actually having fucking conversations about who we can and cannot kill. Now you got ROEs, which is rules of engagement. Do we have to wait to be fired upon? Or it goes nuts. It goes nuts from there. But so if you want to de-escalate, if you're looking just for henchmen a little bit less than your moral conundrum ones, criminals make great ones. Maybe your NPC has affiliated themselves with a local mob that provides or a local biker gang. Not that all biker gangs are bad, but some of them engage in less than legal activities. My father-in-law was a biker, and he knew many, many good bikers, many that were rough men, but good men. So are they allying with a local gang, drug gang? Are they allied with the cartel? The cartel has very, very good killers, great killers. So have your main NPC ally with a criminal organization that will supply. Essentially, you're outsourcing your bad guys.
Yeah, outsourcing your bad guys to do my nefarious work or to be my guards at the drilling site, as Jared said. Or, again, you want to... Again, it depends on how much of a moral conundrum you want to present to your players. Do you want to present human guys as well? Do you want to have maybe you're allied to another group that provides guards, but they're Fomor underneath?
Vampires. I went to the local prince. I said, listen, I will pay you X amount per 10% of the profit from the drilling site for you to provide security. If I'm the prince and wait, you're talking about how much per year? Oh, 300 million a year. I will freaking embrace jackasses just to put that out there on the front lines.
Yeah, I mean, again, you have options here.
Camarilla or not, I will embrace jackasses for 300 million a year. Okay. Oh yeah. Here's our new guy. Why do all of your guys have holes in their neck that seem very recent?
Very, very fresh. Very good. He's
very good.
Look at
those arms. Look at those arms.
I mean, but you can find ways to find more disposable henchmen. It really depends on the encounters that you want your players to have. You can have moral encounters against people that are mortal and easy to kill. You can have mortal encounters against people that are morally unscrupulous. You can have moral encounters against people who are evil. You can have mortal. You can have supernatural encounters if you want to give your players a harder challenge. Again, it's about leaving those breadcrumbs and increasing and escalating your encounters to the point that things start to get more challenging as you rise to the top. Okay.
And here's one of my points, because I'm freaking out over here. Because organization, what I talked about at the beginning, it's an organization, right? Your big bad, your reoccurring villain, isn't actually even supplying the bad guys. He is simply paying someone to supply it. Suddenly, your reoccurring villain has another layer of security. Well, now the werewolf's got to go kill a vampire prince. They're making enemies against the vampire, but the drill site goes on. It keeps going because they've now lost track of the target. Now they're up. Well, you got to kill all the vampires first. Once we kill all the vampires, then we'll go back to the drilling site. Drilling companies operate at extraordinarily fast speeds. In a week, they can be 5 miles away from where they were before. Okay? And I'm talking pipeline and everything. it creates an organization and really has your big bad at the top. And the only weapon he has used is money. And you can even make, with a good motivation, that bad guy at the top be morally questionable, because all he is a guy who wants to keep his family in the lap of luxury, which is what a husband and a father should want to do. I want to give my wife a bigger house. I want my wife to have a nice brand new car. I mean, she pretty much has a brand new car, but I want to give them all these things. I'm a man. I'm a provider. Or there are women that can also be providers. We are not saying that. So there's that. And see how this all goes together. Big Bad is now part of this huge organization. There are different legs. I've got my drilling leg. I've got my security leg. Which one are you going to hit? Maybe I got my transpo. Maybe you're going to decide to take out trucks and sabotage the trucks. Okay, now my transpo leg. What happens when I start putting, I don't know, state troopers out there? Because I'm going to use my political contacts for state troopers to start watching out for my trucks that keep getting their tires slashed at mile 15.
And again, we're talking specific into modern day here. But
yes.
Adapt this into any other branch that you want to go to. I mean, like, if you want to go back into, the Dark Ages, go D&D, go medieval fantasy, like, this works there.
My carriage keeps getting robbed by the old white oak.
Okay? Go into the future. It's Star Wars game, sci-fi. It still works.
Our land speeders kept getting blown up just outside of Mos Eisley.
Yeah, it works in any situation, but it's that organizational set. It's tough because you have a lot of. But the one point that I want to make here at the very end of this. Okay, so one, just reiterate: keep your guy obfuscated at the top.
At the top, he does not meet with players unless you're ready for him to die that night.
Yes, when you present him, the players will start to find a way to kill him. Okay, whether it be that night or it be the next night. Okay, the players will find a way to do it. But the last point that I wanted to make is we are giving you a lot of ways to make the villain tough to get to. You must always make sure, especially in a modern game, that at some point the players can get there. Yep. They can scale the mountain and get there. Okay, if you put too many blocks in front of them, because you're then started saying, well, we're going to put the stadies out there because of my political connections. How many favors does the guy have?
Exactly. Okay. Make sure it is limited and make sure that they can kill the villain. Because in the end, and that's a great point. Jesus, that's a great point. Make sure you know that your reoccurring villain, no matter who he is, has an expiration date. Okay? You will never have a reoccurring villain that's lasted for years. I mean, unless that's the goal.
I mean, they can last for years. You can have this conflict be happening a lot. You just need to make sure that the conflict ebbs and flows.
Yes.
Okay.
The players have to have victories.
It's really important that the conflict ebbs and flows. The players get victories. We talked about blowing up the bad guy's tower. Maybe you destroyed the drilling site.
There we go.
Okay. And so now we've stopped the drilling. Okay. But as time goes on, new things happen that start to conflict with the players, and the villain rises again. Okay? You can bring the villain back up, even if the villain was never brought down.
And that's one of my points that I want to make for the modern world. I tend not to push my villains. I tend to put a lot of my villains as investment people. They work on all sorts of investments, because if you only do oil, we blew up the pipeline. Okay, we're going to try to rebuild the fucking pipeline again. And it's the same story over and over again. It sucks.
But also, when you blow up the pipeline, the villain then might have more motivation to generate a small army to go destroy the werewolves. I mean, like, there's other conflicts that can now arise out of that.
That's true, but it makes it harder. I like when they can do nefarious plans of different types. Okay, well, now we're gonna do this. Now we're gonna, I don't know.
But always have an end game for when you're going to defeat that villain, and if you are going to let him stick around for a very long time, make sure that there are ebbs and flows. It can't be a rising action all the time, to the point, because your players will get frustrated, your players will fight back against you.
And then when originally they were like, well, kind of lives in like a suburban neighborhood, we can't exactly make it a war zone.
They will.
If you keep pushing them, they will be like, you know what? fuck the police and just start going rip shit riot.
As Jared said, it takes one bonar with a submachine gun to ruin that plan.
It does. That's all it takes. And if, that's all it takes, man. And so, Mike, we really wish you the best of luck. So please send us more questions. We love answering questions on the show, on the podcast.
It is a show.
It is a show. We love answering questions. It really is fun for us.
Yeah, I hope that the suggestions work out well to you. You should have also gotten an email with a response on these, and we'll be happy to answer any other questions you have. And again, share this podcast with your friends, share it with other storytellers. We just want to keep making the community better. Let us know how it goes as well. We'd really like to know, how this is working out for you, or if there's like a blind spot that we missed here. And hopefully we do a good job answering the question for you.
Hopefully.
But anyways, that's going to wrap it up for us, or do you got something else you
want
to add?
No, that's it. That's it. We're actually over time by a little bit.
It's the one that went a little bit longer. Episode. It was a good episode. But anyways, again, if you have a question that you want to ask us, a comment on an episode, maybe a comment on this episode, levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com, or contact us at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. You can comment on the episode. You can send us messages through Messenger there, whatever you'd like. We are also on YouTube. So if that's your preferred medium,
smash that like button or give it a motivation and then perhaps have a moral conundrum and then, tap it instead of smashing it.
And like I said, share the podcast with a friend or your gaming group or other storytellers, and review the podcast at your favorite podcast site, Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. It would help make this podcast more searchable, and so we can keep giving out good advice. But that's going to wrap it up for us this week. So for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week, everyone.